Crystal and Verse, and today I'm going to be discussing the books that I read in September of last year. It's been a minute. It's okay though, I take lots of notes. So let's just get into it. So, no particular order, I read Death of Vivek OG by Akwaeke Emezi. I received an arc of this through NetGalley. Thank you to the publishers for that. All opinions are my own. This was a very poignant read about birth families and found families. The title refers to the literal death that starts off the story, but it's also about the figurative death of an identity. The writing style is very descriptive and alluring. Emezi's writing is always top shelf, and it is so interesting how dramatically it varies between each of Emezi's novels. If I didn't know that they had written this, Freshwater, and Pet, I don't know if I would have guessed that they were all by the same author. Emezi just has a special something in their writing that always makes it feel very alive and very beautiful, but it's also so different in everything that they write, and I don't really know how to describe it. I love the camaraderie among the children of the Niger wives and the tenderness that they had for Nemdi. Those friendships are really the highlight of the story for me, and I really related to Juju wrestling with her internalized biphobia. So Juju is bi and she's dating a woman, and one of the issues that she's having is worrying that people will think that she's fake, or that she's just gonna wake up one day and not love her girlfriend anymore, or something like that. And that was something that I related to. Yeah, it's just wild how stuff like that will affect your dating life, even though you know it's ridiculous and not based in reality. I don't know, and even if it were to happen, it's just kind of something that you can take in stride and deal with respectfully, But yeah, I really related to that storyline. It's a very minor one, but something that stood out to me. Like I said, the story is very raw and poignant, and I did really love the tenderness among the found family and all their friendships with each other and their relationships and love for each other. There's a very raw moment where Vivek's parents are mourning his death, and they just found out a truth/a secret about who Vivek was before Vivek died. And there's a lot of anger at a world that would treat Vivek so harshly. And there's also a very sad and very disturbing realization that if they had known this truth about Vivek while Vivek was still alive, they probably wouldn't have accepted it either, and they would have treated Vivek just as harshly as everybody else. That just felt very real. People who can kind of rally around you when it's an outsider causing you grief, but when it's them causing you grief, it's another matter. Yeah, so I'm just glad that Vivek had people that treasured and valued Vivek while Vivek was alive. And I'm still mulling over how Emezi entwines sensuality and eroticism with family. But yeah, it's a very good book. Definitely would recommend checking it out. Very emotional read, very beautifully written, very complex characters. So my next read was Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I read this as part of the Octavia E. Butler slow read hosted by Jerry of Onyx Pages, Tati of Musical Tati, and Isis of Sister Sci-Fi. This is a read I've been putting off for actual years. I knew it was just going to be hard for me to read. Homegoing by Yagyasi tore me up, and so I was not expecting this to be any easier of a read, and so I've been putting it off for years, and the slow read came along, and I was like, okay, now's a good time to read this book that I own. And I just read Body Minds Reimagined, and so I was also pumped to read it because that has a chapter on this. It's a difficult read, there's really no way around it. I enjoyed the problem-solving bits where Dana is figuring out the strategies for how she's gonna navigate antebellum Maryland and what are the best things to bring back with her, and what information she's gonna need to know, and fabricating an identity and all that stuff. Which isn't to say it's the best part, it was just the least fraught emotionally for me to read. So on the whole, I describe this reading experience as taking medicine. It's unpleasant, but I'm better for it. It was really hard for me to read the first third, and then after that I sort of settled into a reading rhythm, and it got a lot easier for me to get through it. And I don't know why that is, because the abuse and the violence just ramps up throughout the book. Like, it doesn't ease off after the first third by any stretch of the imagination. I read the graphic novel first, and I already knew the general plot of the book. And I think knowing what was waiting for me at the end and keeping that in sight at all times made this a lot easier to get through. I think if I didn't know how this was going to end, this would have been a even slower read for me. So, I mean, obviously you need to check it out because it's by the Queen Octavia Butler, the Queen Bee of science fiction. Yes. I feel like how am I not going to recommend Kindred by Octavia Butler? I feel like if you're reading science fiction, she's a must-read. She's like required reading. The next up is Juniper Leaves, the Otherworldly Tale of a Lonesome Magical Girl by Joyner. This was real cute. This is real cute. It's a coming-of-age story about a blurred Juniper Bray. She's going out to the country for her father's research experiment, and she's dealing with this cousin that she doesn't really like, and she's dealing with change and coming of age. And part of that is that she's declared a protector of this magical realm called Cantantus. I like Juniper as a protagonist. She's very self-conscious, and I think that she gets in her own way a few times throughout the book. But I feel like that's relatable. I feel like I've definitely done similar things to her. I would say that the story's a bit light on the fantasy elements. They're introduced later in the story. Juniper and her cousin Bree are sort of shuttling back and forth between Earth and Cantantus, so we get even less time on Cantantus. I feel like we don't really get to understand the full breadth of the world or the magical system, and I would like more of that. If there's like a sequel to this book, I hope that we get to understand that more. Also, Juniper has a crush on other girls. It's really sweet to watch her navigate that. Like, she's trying to flirt, she's trying to pick up on social cues, and that was real cute. That was real sweet. I was rooting for her. Juniper learns about being confident and also staying true to herself and working through conflict. And this was just kind of like a quintessential coming of age story. This was a cute story. Would recommend. Next up is The Vela, which is a serial novel on Serial Box. The authors change every season. This season, the authors were Rivers Solomon, S.L. Huang, Becky Chambers, and Yoon Lee. This one is about a world where these people are harnessing the sun's energy, and that's led to the cooling of the solar system and many fleeing desolate, chilled planets as space refugees. They build these scrap ships and huddle in the limbo of space, hoping to join like any open nation through either a lottery or military service because the planets aren't letting anyone in. And those who are unaffected by the sudden plunge in temperatures are content to pretend that the solar system-wide catastrophe isn't happening. There's a lot of commentary in here about immigration and climate disaster. So in terms of types of representation, there's several LGBTQ plus characters. Asala is a trans woman. Nico, who's a side character, kind of her sidekick, is non-binary. And there are various side characters who are different identities under the LGBTQ plus umbrella. Also, there is some disability rep in here. Asala is hard of hearing and uses a hearing aid, which I thought was noteworthy because there isn't a whole lot of disability representation in sci-fi fantasy. I think that when I see it, it's often like amputation or amputees. I enjoyed this story. There are a couple different cultures in here. There's the Gandesians, there are the Hypatians, there are the Kayami, and they all felt fully realized and intriguing. Like, I would have loved to learn more about any one of them. And I especially liked the details about Asala's ethnic group. Like, they have facial tattoos and clans, and there's like a rich history that she doesn't know a lot about because of when she left her dying planet when she was very, very young, and there were things that she just wasn't told or taught. And there's a lot of political intrigue and suspense going on. It's a very big mystery figuring out what happened to this disappearing ship at the Vela. It's really suspenseful figuring out what happened to it and all the politics around its disappearance. And it's really about all these characters who are caught in this struggle and trying to figure out how to ethically engage with so many unscrupulous nations and so many power-hungry leaders. It was just a very compelling story. Asala is kind of juggling this lost heritage, and does she have a loyalty to a culture that pretty much doesn't exist anymore? Nico's trying to figure out how they feel about their place in this empire that is rejecting refugees and how far are they willing to go to support refugees. There's some like very difficult ethical questions in here. So I read the first season. I don't know if I'm going to get the second season. I just have a lot of other stuff to read. Like, I liked it. The audiobook was great. The narrator did a good job of getting all the different characters and giving them all different inflections. But I do just have like other things to read. And I don't know if I really like the serial novel format that much. But either way, there's definitely interesting things in here, and I think it's worth checking out. So next up, I read Shadowed Sun by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second book in the Dreambud duology, and I enjoyed this a lot more than its predecessor. I didn't dislike Killing Moon. I have high expectations for N.K. Jemisin, and I just want every book that she writes to be like amazing and mind-blowing. I just wanted more out of it, and I think that this book definitely delivered on that. I think that the plot and the political intrigue have more of like the Jemisin luster and Jemisin complexity to them. Shadowed Sun is about a woman, Hanani, who has joined the Hatawa, which is a religious order. She uses magic to heal people. It's basically a very misogynistic order. Like, women aren't really allowed to join. She was kind of a major exception, and she's struggling with that. And also, her city is being occupied by an outside force, and there are whispers that the heir to the city's original ruling class bloodline has returned, and so there's a lot of political intrigue and plot threads going on that Jemisin weaves together in this story. So we get to learn more about the Banbara tribe, who were mentioned in The Killing Sun. The protagonist of this one is Hanani. She's very religious, she's very devoted to the Hatawa. Her male Peel's rejection of her makes her question her allegiance to this order. Jemisin does a very good job at creating side characters who are really intriguing in their own way. The sex scenes in this book are more muted compared to some of her other ones, which I think is fitting given how pleasure is tied to peace in this culture. Also, there just like aren't gods in this book, so some of the stuff is going to be more limited compared to, say, the 100,000 Kingdoms. But it's still well written, still a great read. The brutal customs of the various groups in here definitely had me thinking about redemption, necessity, order, and peace, and I'm definitely going to be rereading, thinking about those questions more deeply. And I really liked Hanani's arc in this book. I think there's a decent amount of fantasy books about women integrating these male-dominated fields and dealing with the disrespect that happens there. And I think a lot of them just kind of have the women shouldering through and excelling, and then they win everyone's respect, and it's all well and good. And I appreciate that Hanani's really grappling with the fact that she could commit this organization whose principles she believes in, but who doesn't value her. Or she could also find alternate ways to fulfill her life's purpose. And I appreciated that Jemisin, like, explores being burnt out and explores being like, okay, like, I have these skills, but, like, is this the only place I can apply these skills? Like, is this place even like the authority that it makes itself out to be? And it was just something I really related to. So I like that. And I really enjoyed this story. Highly, highly recommend. This is one of my favorite reads of this year. And then last up is Dragons in a Bag by Zetta Elliott. This is a middle grade fantasy about a young boy who's helping a family friend deliver some dragons, and he accidentally lets them out and he has to get them back. And this was just a very cute read. The illustrations are by Geneva Bowers, and they're just fantastic. She's such a talented artist. They're beautiful. Jackson's a really great protagonist. He's considerate, he's good at trivia, he's determined, he's really relatable, while also having like this individual spark that makes him stand out and makes it memorable. I really enjoyed the contrast between the mundane world of New York City and the hidden pockets of magic in the city and in other worlds. The descriptions of the magic realm were just beautiful and vibrant and inviting. So that was what I read in September. Have you read anything that I mentioned? If you have, I'd love to talk about it with you. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you want to join the discussion, please comment below. If you would like to stay up to date with me and my bookish activities, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Goodbye.